Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching The Naturalist Capitalist. I'm your host, Reed Coverdale, and I'm pretty excited about today's show. I've got a couple guests who are returning. I had both of them on individually when they were running for Senate and Congress. I had Justin O'Donnell, who was running for U.S. Senate in New Hampshire. How's it going, Justin?
Not bad, Reed. How's it going?
Going good. And then we got Joe Evans, who is running, I forget which district it was, but he was running in Idaho for U.S. Congress. How's it going, Joe?
It's going good. It's going absolutely awesome here. It's been an exciting day.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. We'll have to get into that a little bit. First, since I haven't had you guys on since your races happened, I'll just quickly ask how each one went. So, Justin, how did the race for Senate go? What are your reflections? What do you think?
Not great. We ended up with 2.2%, which and about 20,000 votes, which sadly, I got double the number of votes that Joe Jorgensen got in my state while running in the same statewide district. As well as doubling the amount of votes our candidate for governor got. I like to push that shows something about my message and the way I did things with social media advertising and targeting young disaffected voters was an improvement over the people who did billboards and retail politics with milquetoast libertarian messaging when I went hard radical and targeted young people instead. That I ended up doubling the vote totals in the same district. But again, it wasn't enough to retain ballot access. So the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire is back to being a unrecognized party, and looking forward to our petition drive in 2 years.
Well, how about you, Joe? Do things go well, or what's your
everything? Considering the run actually went fairly well. I pulled a little bit more than 4% of the vote, which was the highest congressional percentage for Libertarian. Now, for third party, let's be real, it was the highest percentage for third party across the nation. With the exception, the one exception, I think it was Minnesota had the LMNOP party. The LMNO party, the legalized marijuana now. They did pretty good with about 10% on the average, but I did my 4.5 here in the state, which was really good. Good message. Social media outreach did well. I managed to get on at least 3 debates with both of the main parties. My Libertarian, both the Democrat challenger to the Republican incumbent and myself, showed up on at least 3 different shows. So, I mean, we're doing good here. And tomorrow we have the Cajun Libertarian will be interviewing my party chair. So that's a good thing that's going on. And I'm very deeply involved right now with legalization of marijuana here in the state of Idaho. So I'm hoping
you got an uphill battle there.
Dude, they need it. We got so many alt-right Christians here that really need to just smoke a bowl and relax because they're really wound up tight.
Yeah, wherever this narrative came from that the Republicans are moderating on drugs, that doesn't seem to be the case across the country this year when you look around.
No. I mean, right now, it's honestly a surprise because we had 2 bills that came through here in the state of Idaho trying to curb our ability to legalize, psychoactive drugs. But the focus was on marijuana. They say otherwise, but, marijuana was the big push.
Hey, mushrooms would be great too. I mean,
right?
While we're at it,
some microdosing. Go ahead and actually take advantage of its medicinal properties. But we had 2 different bills with the intent of making constitutional amendments that would prohibit the people from deciding whether or not they could legalize marijuana in the state. And the first one just barely passed the Senate to die in the House. And the second one actually started in the House, passed committee, and then died on the floor of the House after a 2-hour debate today.
Jesus.
Well, congratulations on that, at least. I mean, it's pretty sad that that's our victory, that a bill to amend the Constitution to permanently ban marijuana just failed. Like, that's a victory. But
I mean, in New Hampshire, it's weird enough. In New Hampshire, our bill to legalize marijuana failed last week or a week before in the House. And what's astounding about that is it's a Republican majority, but there were 66 plus Republicans that voted for it. It's just a whole bunch of Democrats voted against it too.
Wow.
oh my God.
Well, the Democrats couldn't let the Yards get a victory on that one.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Hey, that's why Biden's finishing the wall, to make sure that Trump can't campaign on it again.
Ooh. Ow. That hurts.
Oh man. Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this conversation because all three of us are not in any caucus of the Libertarian Party, and I think
How'd that happen?
What's that?
How'd that happen?
I don't know.
But I mean, I think technically, we're all members of the Beard Caucus.
That's true.
Oh.
Although I think Joe is the leading member there. So.
I don't know. Tom Arnold, I think, has to claim.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That's true.
But yeah, I feel like we've, for the most part, we kind of stay above the fray, and we're kind of level-headed, and the shithead screaming at each other that's constantly happening. It doesn't seem to be something any of the three of us really take part in. But we've all got our own individual opinions on the caucuses and what's going on in the party and the direction it's heading. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. But Justin, you're from New Hampshire like me. I'm in Utah now, but you were at the convention the other week where the shit went down, and you've been making a lot of posts about it, how people who weren't there are talking about what happened when you were actually there. So why don't you tell us what actually happened? What was going on there? What's all the fuss about?
I mean, I think the best explanation of what happened is a quote from Nick Sarwark. The Libertarian Party is the people who show up. And what happened in New Hampshire was the members of the Mises Caucus showed up. They were upset with the direction of the state party. They had a very large group of people who were very motivated to do things, some of which I've known for years, most of which have been members of the party for a long time, who have finally decided to get active and taken like a larger hand in what was going on. 3 of the Mises Caucus members were elected to our 6-member executive committee. I supported all 3 of them. 3 people that I've known for a while who've shown a great amount of interest in actually picking up the slack. And to be perfectly frank, in the past year, starting around late summer, carrying up to the election, I started to get really disheartened with the state party leadership myself. And some people were really salty and blaming me, accusing me of, quote, Dollar Tree espionage and being New Hampshire's Ted Cruz and being a sellout and a snake for orchestrating the Mises Caucus takeover. All I did was went to a Mises Caucus meetup a month before the convention and give a few people a primer on Robert's rules and how to handle themselves at convention. They did the work. They recruited the numbers. They showed up. They were motivated, and they put themselves in a position to carry out their promises and work to actually improve the party moving forward.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of beef with Nick Sarwark. And I don't know him. I know you do. I only know him through Twitter, but from what I've heard some people say, it's not much better in person than it is in Twitter. But what was that whole deal with the running for state treasurer and then losing to none of the above? There's a lot of jazz around that. So what happened with that?
Yeah. I'm going to be the first to come out and defend Nick for a lot of the stuff that people have problems with him for. In my time on the LNC and working with him, I got along with him very well. We tended to be aligned as far as business goals of the party and the business operations of the party. And we worked very well together. I looked towards his guidance a lot in those roles. I still believe he was one of the best chairs the party's ever had from a position of where he left the party, how the party grew under his leadership, and his management approach that he took as chair of the party, as well as being able to not manage just the affairs of the business organization day to day, but also manage the personalities on the LNC and getting people to work together towards a common goal is an incredibly difficult task. And he was able to herd those cats. People hated him because of his snark on Twitter, but to be perfectly frank, that was something I was able to disconnect from who he was, having worked with him so closely over the years. That being said, for the longest period of that time, I lived here in New Hampshire, and he lived in Phoenix, Arizona. And last year, he made the move here to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, and all of a sudden found out that his Twitter personality was his real life personality. And that's how he engaged with people in our community on a daily basis, picking fights with people over perceived slights and speaking in riddles and backhanded insults, and like working to manipulate things behind the scenes. The vice chair of the state party wouldn't do anything without Nick Sarwark's leave. He'd abandoned his previous friends group and became Nick Sarwark's puppet and running mate. And it was all about Sarwark says, Sarwark says, Sarwark says. And it was tearing the state party to nothingness because nobody would do anything. Nobody could get along and nobody would work. I have no doubt in my mind Nick would have been a perfectly qualified treasurer. I have no doubt in my mind that when it came to principled things on the state committee, he would have voted in an appropriate manner and led things in an appropriate manner. But the problem is he's become so divisive in our community, not just in the party, but in our local political community here at the Free State Project in New Hampshire at large, that having him there was too much of a downfall. And that's the reason I voted NOTA, is because the lack of goodwill that Nick has in the community and the downside to our image and our public relations simply by being associated with him outweighed any benefit he could do in that position.
Gotcha. So, Joe, is there any caucus struggle in Idaho of any sort, or what's going on in Idaho as far as that goes?
We actually killed that last year. No, but the thing is, the Mises Caucus takeover has been a couple years in the planning. And we actually had a couple people who identified with the Mises Caucus here in the state of Idaho that were interested in taking over the party. That said, the people who self-identified as MC weren't really in tune with the MC platform or the Libertarian platform for that matter. And it showed when it came time for the vote, because we had a brand new person to the Libertarian Party of Idaho show up in the person of Jenny Imhoff. And we nominated her to challenge essentially MC Deadweight, and she took the seat by the flip of a coin, which was really, really good because she already had the in with the Joe Jorgensen campaign. She had experience out of, I think it was San Francisco, coming up here as California LP county LP chair to work as the state LP chair up here in Idaho, which is ironic. You know, the state of Idaho has fewer people than the county of Orange in California.
Right.
So here she is, going from this seat with a lot of people, and now she's here in Idaho running the state with fewer people to work with. But, but we killed that a year and a half ago, just leading up to the campaign, and the timing was really fortuitous. So we don't have to worry about that at the moment. And our Mises Caucus have basically come to be pretty satisfied with the amount of work that myself and Ginny and some of the other people involved in the Libertarian Party here in the state of Idaho have done. It's like Justin was pointing out, it's the people who show up, and the people who showed up here in Idaho just didn't happen to be MC. We were unaffiliated as far as caucus went. Some of us were just barely affiliated with the LP. Less than a year or so with the party itself, being a registered libertarian, paying our dues to the LP, whether it was national or state. But we were the ones who were showing up. So we're in a good position moving forward.
Well, that's one of the fascinating things I find about like who showed up in New Hampshire. Like if we did a roll call, I'd say maybe half of the convention attendance was Mises Caucus.
Yeah.
Yet Nick Sarwark lost to none of the above by 2/3. It wasn't the Mises Caucus that did him in. It was the people who had given him every chance to be their friend and every chance to prove he was here to actually work for the party instead of himself over the past year, and it just proved otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like to me there is some legitimate strife between Mises Caucus people and non-Mises people, but there's also some fabricated there's some fabricated struggle there that doesn't really exist, that it seems like people create to give themselves a feeling of purpose. Do you think that's accurate? Like this is some
yes and no. And I'm going to say it's because every person that I've met from the Mises Caucus in person who's actually shown up to events, shown up to party functions, gone out, helped and volunteered, they've been amazing. They've been dedicated libertarians. They're people who understand the point and the purpose of their caucus and their platform. They're people who are working to the advancement of the party and everyone involved for the betterment of not just themselves, but for their communities and this country at large. However, then you Google hashtag #MeCaucus on Twitter, and it's a goddamn shit show where people are just picking fights. All they care about is combating woke leftists, SJWs, and everybody who disagrees with them on any minor issue is a woke leftist SJW. And they're doing a discredit to the people in their caucus who are actually putting in the work and actually doing great things for the party and for the movement.
Yeah, I think that because we've been so forced inside and away from large gatherings over the last year, that maybe Twitter has become more of a reality than it really is to us. Like maybe we take it more seriously than we should.
Well, the same instance, the people who are getting mad at the Mises Caucus kids, they're the ones who spend all their time on Twitter instead of actually going out and working and helping the party. So all they're seeing is the people shitposting on Twitter and picking fights with them rather than the people who are actually putting in the work and running for office.
Yeah, by the way, I'm totally guilty of that category because I'm a truck driver. I'm in Utah. For the first time in the last 12 days. I couldn't even make it to the Utah LP convention. I was hauling a load in California. So I fully admit to that label of the guy who's commenting on the sidelines, but hey, I do what I can do.
That's part of the problem is right now, we always run the problem with people come to the Libertarian Party thinking it's something different than what it is. And bizarrely, the whole idea of the social conservative in the Libertarian Party that doesn't understand self-determination, bodily autonomy, especially when it comes to lifestyles, let's say. It's like, I'm here for freedom, as long as it's not an address. It's like,
right.
Dude, you're missing the point. And it's actually bizarre because it's not just the LGBTQ community that a lot of them are going after. A lot of them are actually straight up misogynistic, and they're going after the women in the party too. Mm-hmm. The idea of sex workers, deregulation or delegislation, decriminalization of sex work. The fact that it's a party platform issue, it's like, ew.
It's a Mises Caucus platform plank too.
Right? Exactly. So how is it social conservatives end up in the Mises, completely ignorant of their own platform?
Right.
On Twitter, on Facebook, talking shit about all of the social justice workers, right? The SJWs go a little overboard sometimes, but I mean, how do you talk crap about them when your own platform says they're doing the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw something phenomenal like the other day. I've been spending my days deep diving into YouTube and different people and different points of view because I've recently discovered the algorithm has put me in a hardcore echo chamber of libertarianism. Right. And I started watching Russell Brand's video series that he's been putting out the past week.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know how Russell Brand hasn't gotten into my libertarian echo chamber, because a week or so ago he put out a video about vaccine passports and the dangers that vaccine passports pose to human liberty and human freedom, and how there's no difference between the government instituting or large corporations, aka government 2, instituting them through the violent monopoly on force. And at the end of the video, he has like a 5-minute rant where he just goes, like, no more cut-ins, no more like graphs or data. He just goes and he rants about the most fundamental tenet and like foundational block of human liberty and human freedom is bodily autonomy. And like, that resonated and rings with me. It's something that I preach a lot here. In fact, AJ Olding, a good friend of mine who lives here in Nashua, New Hampshire, he ran for Congress. He runs around, his catchphrase is libertarianism is consent culture. Because bodily autonomy is the basis of all human freedom and liberty, and consent culture needs to be the basis of all interactions in order for bodily autonomy to be respected. And I think the sex work and our social liberty platform all falls into that with bodily autonomy. It's an individual choice to what to do with their body should be the fundamental founding aspect of how we view freedom and liberty.
Yeah, so I might be wrong here, but my initial my initial beef with the Mises Caucus was because I was taking Twitter idiots as actual like Mises representation,
right?
But
idiots.
Everyone that I've actually talked to, even like Dave Smith and Pete Quinones and like people like that, they're totally in favor of sex work decriminalization, all these things. It seems like a lot of that negative image that is cast on the Mises Caucus is because of some guy on Twitter who has the Mises profile picture, but he might not even actually be in the party or doing anything. He just, he likes part of the problem and some of the edgy stuff Dave says. So he's a Mises member, but then he's talking about how great the cops are and, how we need to ban abortion or whatever, like stuff that, and he's not running for anything. He's not an active member of the caucus. So do you think there's a lot of misrepresentation there by the idiots who get on Twitter? Or
There's a huge amount of misrepresentation, but a lot of misunderstanding as well. To your point, like they might just follow Dave Smith or Tom Woods, and that makes them Mises. Dave really kind of has become the face of the Mises Caucus. Whether or not he wants it, whether or not he's good for it, I don't think he's bad for it. I think Dave's a great public face for that kind of a thing, and he does wonderful work. And I think anybody who's taken the time to listen to his podcasts will know that there's no actual issue with them. It blows my mind. When I was working on the Jorgensen campaign, right after she filed, she came to New Hampshire. First event of the campaign after the convention was we did a filing event in Concord, where we started the petition drive to get her on the ballot here in New Hampshire. And I lined up a few news interviews and local interviews. And like a day or two later, Dave had tweeted that he was looking for contact info to get her on his show. And I'm like, fuck it. I got DM Dave. I'm like, yo, what's your email? I'll get her on your show. No problem. And me and Dave talked a bit, and I got Joe on his show. And within the week, I had some of the woke left libertarian SJW crowd down my throat about me destroying Joe's campaign by associating her with Dave Smith.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I'm just like, I actually watched it. Now, I had never watched Dave's podcast before. I'd followed Dave on Twitter. I interacted with him a lot on Twitter. At Porkfest, I interact with him a lot. I'm not a podcast guy. I can honestly say I have been on more podcasts than I've listened to. But like I listened to Dave's episode with Joe, and every other interview Joe did the entire campaign as part of my job fundraising for her. And her interview with Dave was the best representation she got as a candidate the entire cycle. And like he gave her the best interview she had the entire cycle. And these people were saying that associating with him was associating with white nationalists and racists. And it just blew my mind that that's the impression people get just because Dave associates with Tom Woods and because Tom Woods did a bad photo op 40 goddamn years ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny that you bring up that interview because I was coming off the Tulsi campaign, going to the Jorgensen campaign. That's the video where she said like I forget exactly what it was, but Tulsi was the worst candidate because she was like a wolf in sheep's clothing, basically. And
I think that was the conversation more along the lines of, we got an awful lot of libertarians like Tulsi, but Tulsi doesn't have libertarian values. She's got this off left, version of things that go on that is contradictory to,
Tulsi did the thing that libertarians can't do. Tulsi did the thing that we've been trying to do for 40 goddamn years and haven't been able to do as a party. She put out a campaign based on values that were important to her and attracted people from all over the political spectrum.
Right.
I went to every Tulsi event in New Hampshire that I could. If I wasn't working or at another, like at a Joe event, I was at the Tulsi event that happened that day during the whole primary season. And the number of MAGA hats I saw at Tulsi rallies, the number of people open carrying rifles and handguns I saw at Tulsi rallies, the number of people that I recognized as free staters and anarchists at the Tulsi rallies, the number of people who I first met at Ron Paul rallies that I saw at Tulsi rallies astounded me. I went to one at Murphy's Tap Room in Manchester, New Hampshire, and there were like 5. It was packed. You could not fit more people in there. I had never seen that restaurant so packed. There were about 500 people crammed into the back room to hear her talk. And I'm looking at the crowd, and there were maybe 5 people I didn't know. And these are all the anarchists, the libertarians, the Republicans. There were about 20 Republican state reps in that room. She did what we have failed to do for 40 years, which is find an appeal outside of her own echo chamber.
Yeah, that's how I actually thought Joe really failed in that interview in just that regard, because you can say that Tulsi isn't libertarian, that you agree with her on a lot of things and try to bring people in. That was not the way she went about it. It was just like, it was the typical libertarian way of doing things. Like, oh no, she was really bad. She basically sucked, like, but come vote for me. And I was like, that's not how you're gonna get those supporters to come over, but whatever.
And I gotta say, her campaign, like you said on Dave's podcast. I did listen to your episode of Dave's podcast, Reed. It's phenomenal. The homegrown campaign, and there was something special about that here in New Hampshire, where as long as you live, you can't get breakfast during primary season without running into a presidential candidate in New Hampshire. I've sat down at a diner, and in the course of my 1 hour sitting there, had 3 different presidential candidates ask if I had a moment to talk about their campaign. It's annoying as hell. Tulsi didn't do that. Tulsi's campaign was different. I think that was a large part of the appeal. It's like it felt more like a group of friends and family doing things that they believed in, rather than people being paid on the party dime to go around and do retail politics to people who know retail politics as just part of their daily life.
Yeah. The other thing she did well that I think libertarians should take note with is she emphasized the important issues that a lot of people would agree with her on, and then some of her issues that she would align with Bernie Sanders on, she really didn't talk about that much, and she kept them lower on the radar because she realized how divisive they were. So she really focused on the things that would bring people together.
Until you guys let her put a gun control billboard on 101 in Manchester.
That I had nothing to do with that. I don't even know about that. What did it say?
It was just like Tulsi Gabbard for sensible gun control, blah, blah. And then she started running the radio ad. And that's when all the anarchists, libertarians, and Republican state reps and everyone else just disappeared.
Yeah. Trust me, I did everything I could to counter that in my limited involvement there. But yeah, so for the most part, she stayed away from stuff like that. She tried to really push the issues that Americans and people across the political spectrum would care about. And I think that's what we need to do too. And we're not very good at that. We tend to go after the fringe issues or the isolated issues. And I understand, like, state to state, it changes. I mean, if you're in Manhattan, then sex work is probably more important than something that'll be important in, I don't know, Iowa or, I mean, they're going to change geographically. But in general, it seems like we need to go after like the big ticket issues to try to get support across the aisle, support from multiple places because there aren't enough of us out there that are just staunch libertarians that are going to make a difference. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I mean, there is something to be said about people who aren't staunch libertarians becoming staunch libertarians. Jim, can't remember Jim's last name, from Maine. Jim Bouchard from Maine. He ran a couple times for U.S. Senate in Maine as a Libertarian, once as a write-in candidate, and actually got a couple percent. He wrote a book called Crazy Angry Libertarian. And the premise of his book is that nobody ever has this like, oh, I'm a libertarian now. You just don't become a libertarian overnight.
Right.
But everybody has a compounding series of life experiences and their experience through life that leads them to the realization that they always were a libertarian. Right. Because once you come to that mentality of liberty and human freedom, it's not something you can just turn on and off. It's something you realize was always a part of you and always a part of your core beliefs. And you're now just applying it at the forefront. And I think it's a matter of how our candidates speak to people. We can speak on radical and fringe issues if we learn how to speak to people where they are. And we learn how to present those radical and fringe issues to people in a manner that they care about and that resonate with them, as opposed to having somebody stand up on stage and just start screaming taxation is theft. You need to talk to people about the tax burden of their everyday lives and how there's nothing in your everyday life that isn't regulated or taxed, and how the U.S. government is so controlling on your life, and how much easier would it be if you just got to keep your money instead of waiting to get it back once a year from the government.
I think that a lot of the people who push for the radical message, they forget that you have to meet people on their own turf and you have to explain why the radical messaging is important. And some people even look at that as watering down the message, just explaining to somebody why it matters. Right. It's like, how is that watering the message down? You're literally trying to explain why people care.
And that's the issue Mises Caucus has internally. Right now they're having a big debate over how to exactly phrase the Mises Caucus message to reject the vaccine passport process. Half the party's going, domestic terrorism, that's a little over the top, and the other half is going, it's not strong enough.
Right.
It's like,
there's something to be said about getting attention. There's something to be said about what the Libertarian Party Kentucky did. Just something bold, something audacious. It just gets everyone's attention. The problem was the lack of follow-up. The problem was the lack of clarification in a manner which captivated on the audience you got to actually explain that message and to convert the people who were outraged. You got people emotional and then did nothing about it.
Yeah, and that was the problem. That's one of the problems we got with all of our follow-up with most of our candidates. Vermin Supreme, he's done a real good job of getting out and meeting people on the turf, but he does the initial dialogue and then he moves into the humor and laughs, everything he just said off. Most of our other candidates in the debates, they get up on stage and it's about the quick quip and the laugh of the audience and they're ready to move on. The part of the problem is we have either ideologues that get into the nuts and bolts, or we have comedians that want the short quips, who are using the Libertarian Party as a platform for the comedic stage. Not knocking on, Dave Smith, but
a little bit knocking on Dave Smith.
Well, actually, I can't knock on Dave Smith because he just did an interview with one of my favorite peace activists. Dan McKnight, one of my friends here in Idaho, him and I have spent an amount of time working on a thing called bringourtroopshome.us.
That's one of the things that pisses me off the most about the woke SJW and the Prags and the people who hate on Dave Smith, because their whole big thing is, he's platformed the right. He platforms the left if they come with an issue to talk about. Yeah. He'll platform anybody who can speak to an issue in a manner that fits his program. Yeah. It's not just the right. He'll go to the peace and anti-war activists, no problem.
Okay, Justin. I gotta put you on hold right there. Because Dan isn't actually a left peace activist. He's actually a hard right peace activist and a social conservative.
All right.
So having one of those conversations with him, you start going left on the SJW stuff. He's like, whoa. But, the anti-war, the pro-peace, the bring our troops home, he's all about that. And he's tapped into an energy on the right for the peace movement that is building. It really is. And it's one of those things, like right now, the only peace movement is the right peace movement.
Well, it's like June Lapine. June Lapine, aka Shoe on Head. She's Shoe on Head on YouTube and Twitter. Just her big issue is hardcore anti-war. She trashes Biden nonstop. She trashed Kamala Harris nonstop. She identifies as a leftist, but aside from being anti-war, she attacks feminists and SJWs, and I think she'd fit the modern definition of the hard right anti-war.
Well, yeah, But no, Dave Smith actually did an interview with him. I think it's about to air either, it may be airing right now or early tomorrow.
I think it already did, like a couple hours ago. But speaking of like having left people on, he did just have Ben Burgess on the other day. And he didn't argue with him at all. He was just talking about his new book. And I actually looked. This is the funny thing. We were talking about before we started the stream that a lot of people's fans don't represent the actual speaker's view necessarily. Like a lot of Dave Smith people apparently don't listen to what Dave Smith says. You know, there's a lot of Trump supporters that like Dave Smith, and they obviously don't listen to what he says about Trump. But I was reading through the comments in the live chat as he was interviewing Ben Burgess. It was nothing but people angry at him that he wasn't like arguing with him about socialism. You know, it's just like he straight up said on the show that I was on with him that he was going to have Ben Burgess on and he wanted to talk with him about his book and he wasn't going to argue with him. But you have all these right wingers in the comments who are all pissed off that he's not arguing with him.
Well, you can say that about any group, but the people who follow it, for the large part, aren't actually familiar with what it stands for. Don't follow what it stands for. Like, I guarantee you, if you ask a group of people who self-identify as Mises Caucus members, the bulk of them have never read anything by Mises. You ask a bunch of people
who haven't even read the platform.
If you ask a group of people who identify as Radical Caucus, the bulk of them have never read any Rothbard. If you ask a bunch of prags who identify as pragmatist caucus, a bunch of them have never read the Libertarian Party platform. It's across the realm. Like people will identify as a thing without actually knowing what it stands for. And again, I've heard people's biggest complaint about the Mises Caucus. One person individual's biggest complaint about the Mises Caucus is that he's never heard the caucus say anything about Austrian economics. It's like that's what they're supposed to be founded for, to bring the debate about Austrian economics to the Libertarian Party. Yet I've never heard a word of Austrian economics out of any Mises candidate for internal office.
You know, which is ironic because, you know, I'll show up, I'll bring the Austrian economics up all the time. You know, it's about decentralization. It's about moving it down to the lowest level. So why isn't the Mises Caucus talking about that? You know, other libertarians are.
Right. Yeah. And I think if there was a focus, like if the caucuses were more issue based and the caucuses in the party were more along focused on shit like getting people to run for platform committee and campaigning for platform blanks and changes to the party's platform based on ideological differences, it'd make more sense for them to exist. The reason I refuse to join a caucus is because every caucus has people that I can support for various offices, and every caucus is full of people that I can work with constantly, and I don't understand why they're opposed to each other. Especially like most of the Mises Caucus people that I've talked to would get along great with the Radical Caucus if they actually talked platform and policy issues. But the Radical Caucus is just hung up on the propaganda that the Mises are a bunch of Republican lights who just want to take over the party and refuse to give them that shot. A bunch of prags, again, are more radical, if not as radical as Mises and Radical Caucus people, but they care more about dedicating the entirety of the party's resources to barely win one race against an incumbent who didn't spend any money.
Right. It seems that the culture
need to spend any money.
It seems that the cultural stuff is what all the fighting's about. It doesn't really seem to be about issue-based stuff for the most part. I mean, it seems like it's just, you know, it's really just about like what each caucus cares about culturally, whether it's you know, the radicals, if they care about you know, something that's more of an SJW issue, then the Mises Caucus will get triggered by it, and then the the radicals get triggered by it in reaction, and then even though they don't necessarily oppose each other anywhere on policy related to that issue, they'll just be fighting over it. And it's like, guys, who cares? Like, they've locked us down, and we're still bombing all these countries, and we're still bailing out Wall Street. So like, who cares? Like, why are we getting into this cultural battle when our platforms say that we don't even care about what your cultural preference is? It's your choice anyway.
You guys are fighting over what direction the party should go as far as internal chairmanship and structure. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here wondering why the fuck I just had to renew my passport to fly to Florida.
Right.
Florida? What is Florida a foreign nation?
Oh, because I don't have a real ID, because New Hampshire doesn't have real ID. So I can't get on a plane out of state without a passport.
That's right.
To the point,
like, went to the Star ID card so that we can get the federal travel.
So, like, to the point.
Okay, let's bring that up. Right now, we got a big to do about papers, about vaccine passports. Your vaccine passport. It's like the vaccines is the straw that broke the camel's back. How long have we been handing over papers to travel? Show me your ID. Excuse me, sir. Do you know how fast you were going? Can I see your ID? Can I see your driver's license? Yeah, I mean, how long have we been handing over our travel papers?
We've been doing it so long, but the point I'm trying to make to people in the arguments that I'm picking on Twitter and the debates I'm having on social media is that just because we've gotten used to one form of tyranny does not make its extension appropriate.
Right.
Just because we've accepted tyranny in one aspect of our lives as a culture does not mean we shouldn't resist it in other forms. Somebody comes up and they're arguing, it's like, oh, passports are bad now. I'm like, yes, they always have been.
Always.
The fact that I need to show identification and get permission from the government to visit somewhere else where members of my species are residing is asinine. The idea of nationalism, the idea of national borders is predicated on the belief that an individual's worth is determined based on what side of an arbitrary line they were born on. Right. Yes, passports are tyranny. They always have been. Just because you put the word vaccine in front of it doesn't make it any worse than the existing tyranny. It's just a new form of tyranny we need to oppose.
Right.
Right to pursuit of happiness. Go wherever you need to go to be happy, man.
Right, but it is only a right to pursue. You don't have a right to happiness, and that's something other people need to learn as well. You have the right to pursue happiness. You don't have the right to have it guaranteed.
There is that, and that's a huge problem with American culture. We've reached that point where everybody assumes you're supposed to make me happy. It's in the Declaration. No, that's not there, man. You read it wrong. Sorry. No guarantees of happiness. Chase it, pursue it, but yeah, nobody owes it to you, and you aren't guaranteed it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the delivery of my Browning M2 machine gun. That says I'm guaranteed the right to bear arms. Where is it?
Right? Human right to personal defense.
Absolutely.
Give me my boost.
I need it for pest control.
So, Joe, I've got a question for you. I've gotten most of my backlash for having like Ryan Dawson on my show, people like that. I don't really get it for having left-wing people on, and I've had a few left-wing people on. But there's this narrative that there isn't pushback against leftism, as cultural leftism. I'm not talking about like economically or governmentally, but like cultural leftism, there isn't a pushback against that in the Libertarian Party. I definitely don't think that's true, but I was wondering if you could talk to that at all from your experience.
Yeah, I think there's a huge pushback from cultural leftism, partly because of the sheer number of social conservatives that have moved into the party from the Republicans after they watched the Republicans just screw stuff up left and right. So we start looking at the left libertarian, and we're going, well, ironically, the left libertarians are the ones that are looking at things and going, it's time to tear down the institutions, and the right's going, yeah, everything except capitalism. No, all the institute. We need to tear them all down. Get back down to base level. And yeah, but not capitalism. So everyone on the right still has their favorite institutions that they want to be able to retain. And one of my big arguments, I support Black Lives Matter. Not the organization, but the movement. Because there is an issue that right now an awful lot of the Black lives, are still considered. We got the Dawson shooting right now, right? Isn't that the one where the cop shot the 13-year-old just because he had a gun? No, body cam image says he didn't.
They found a gun nearby.
Right?
But he wasn't holding it in the body cam footage.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, who are you going to trust? You going to trust a 20-year police veteran, or are you going to trust your own eyes and the body cam footage?
I don't know. Are they screaming taser?
I don't know. What?
You didn't see that one? It's on
I
video.
saw that one too. That one's another one that's screwed up.
Taser, pop. Oh God, what did I do?
Oops.
When your taser goes bang, it's not a good day.
No, it's not. But you start looking at that, and you get an awful lot of the right social conservatives saying, "But no, dude, tear down the institutions." I mean, we go through everything that is a victimless crime, And the thing is you start telling them, we're going to do away with victimless crimes because it's going to benefit everybody. Well, it's going to benefit the white people. It's going to benefit the right people, right? No, dude, everybody. It benefits everybody. You start taking a look at the communities. And I actually brought this up in another discussion. When it comes to Black communities in America, we have proof that an anarcho-capitalist community can exist in the United States. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We've had historical proof that it works. Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1930. Anarcho-capitalist, 100%. Right up until the day all the white people went in and killed them all. We've had the same thing. Black community has proven incontrovertibly that anarcho-communism works. Black Panthers, 1970s, 1960s.
Move Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia, Oakland. The Rainbow Coalition in Chicago.
I try and tell people as an anarchist myself, when I hear people say, "Oh no, we must preserve and defend capitalism. Capitalism's the only system that'll work," or people say, "Oh no, we must preserve communism and destroy capitalism. Communism's the only system that'll work." And I'm sitting there like, as an anarchist, it's intellectually dishonest to not recognize that any post-state society will be inherently panarchist with a multitude of competing regional economic systems that people are free to voluntarily engage in and move at will. To say that anarchy can only work with capitalism when Move Philadelphia and indigenous tribes in North America, the Peshmerga and Kurds in northern Iraq and Syria have proven that anarcho-communism can work is asinine. To say that only anarcho-communism can work when things like Black Wall Street, with things like the Providence Plantation, things like Georgian penal colonies prove that anarcho-capitalism works, is just as idiotic. Any post-state society, absent the force of government dictating one economic system or another, will inherently have all of them competing.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think the capitalist, and that's part of our indoctrination here in America. That's part of our culture, the culture of capitalism. Whether it's good or bad, it's about the money. It's the velocity of money. It's how fast the money turns around. You need to get out. You need to consume. You need to spend. You need to earn. You need to get other people to buy the stuff you make.
You need to invest in Bitcoin Cash.
Oh, yeah. Dogecoin. Dogecoin. But yeah, no, it's ridiculous because when it all comes down to it, capitalism is just what we've been taught as Americans is how we measure our happiness. If you make more money, you'll be happier. Bullshit.
The time I was happiest in life was when I was making no money. I was traveling across the country and I didn't have a job. That was the happiest I've ever been. So,
well, I mean, there's a difference between working and not making money. I haven't punched a time clock or worked in the past, it's almost 15 months now. And it's been the best year of my life. But I have income.
Right.
There's different streams of income, but like not working for somebody and having time to dedicate to stuff like my art projects and writing full time has actually been enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing is when we step out of that, dichotomy, capitalism versus communism, and you go, you know what? I don't care about whether or not my labor has value. I don't care whether or not the stuff I own has value. Am I happy? And how do you find that balance between the value of your labor versus the value of the shit that you've acquired, collected, that you got to pay storage for in order to maintain, versus just doing what you need to be happy, balancing between the two, Molly Smith.
I think millennials, like as a generation, that's something that I think my generation has kind of embraced. People 25 to 40 right now, embracing the idea that you can live without stuff, that minimalism and happiness isn't tied to the white picket fence in Jonesville. It's tied to a converted Mercedes camper van that you can drive anywhere you want with a satellite uplink to work remotely. To just like have as little stuff as possible and live on the road. And there's a huge uptick in van life and nomadic lifestyle right now. And I think my generation has kind of gotten fed up with the consumerist aspect of capitalism and is embracing these kind of alternatives. And it's the way forward. We're going to see people downsizing to tiny homes, to mobile lifestyles, especially now that the pandemic has forced the vast majority of America's workforce to realize that they can work from home and don't need to be in an office every day. That is going to open up opportunities in whole new markets.
Yeah, I think
end up in a van down by the river.
God,
it's not that bad right now.
Yeah.
I think the conflict with libertarians when it comes to talking about capitalism and communism is that libertarians mean anarcho-capitalism and they don't mean anarcho-communism when they're talking about it. Like they're talking about like Stalinism versus anarcho-capitalism.
And I try every time I get into a friendly debate with an anarcho-communist, somebody self-identifying as an anarcho-communist, and like I try and argue why I believe an anarcho-capitalist society would be better than an anarcho-communist. I don't think they're incompatible. I think they will exist simultaneously in a post-state society, but I would prefer to live in an anarcho-capitalist society.
Right.
I try and tell them all, stop using the word communist. Unfortunately, the connotation there is just shit.
Yeah.
Use the word mutualist. And on our side, capitalist, we need to stop using the word capitalist.
Yeah,
because capitalist has become ingrained with what is in reality corporatist. What is reality? Fascist America, where corporations and governments work hand in hand. That's what's considered capitalism by most people, not voluntarism. So I would like to see maybe more of the right anarchists start to identify as anarcho-voluntarists instead of anarcho-capitalists, and left anarchists identify as anarcho-mutualists, people working with mutual aid to survive instead of voluntary exchange. And I think when you phrase things in those terms, you eliminate a lot of the prejudice in debate.
Yeah, I'll get on that. I'll update the show to the naturalist voluntarist. And so got to work on that.
The naturalist mutualist. Let's go with that.
Here's the thing. It's like I recognize that I come from that. I come at that debate from an incredibly privileged position whereby I live in a anarcho-voluntarist community. here in New Hampshire, because of the Free State Project that's encouraged the migration of so many libertarians and anarchists from across the world, not even just the country, to this small community that we operate largely outside the law. We don't do business licenses. We don't do like public schools. We have homeschooling communities. We have weekly markets where we all meet together and everybody brings their booth to vend their wares. We work a lot in barter. I have a friend who runs a farm about an hour away. I go to her farm and I pay her in either silver or cryptocurrency for meat. There's no business licensing involved. There's no government regulation involved in our daily lives. We even have a community center. Right now, we're actually running a fundraiser to try and save that community center because the landlord's trying to sell the building and we're trying to purchase it from him. And it's something we would like to own as like a permanent feature. But like living in a truly voluntarist community, I think does privilege my perception.
Okay, just excuse me a moment here. Fundraiser for collective ownership of a community center.
Yeah. On a voluntary means. So we have a GoFundMe set up. The way it is, we've established the community center. It's called the Quill. We colloquially call it the Quill under an organization that we've established called the Fraternal Order of the Porcupines. And we've established it as a fraternal order, like the Elks or the other lodges that exist, but purely for libertarians and anarchists who live in the New Hampshire area. And we operate a community center, which has a nightclub, maybe a speakeasy in the basement, allegedly, and where members of our community can come to congregate, where we can barter and exchange in voluntary exchange. We host events and market days, and we host educational panels there, and homeschoolers can use the space during the daytime. People have worked from home there throughout the course of this pandemic when we had issues with internet access in the neighborhood, and to provide a true community resource. And we even do weekly dinners for the whole community, big potluck dinners during the lockdown when all the restaurants were closed. These are services we wanted to provide to our community. The landlord that's been renting us the building has been very friendly to what we want to do. He does not live in New Hampshire, but due to the changes in his circumstances and his family life, he needs to sell the building. And we are trying to raise the $600,000 to purchase the building from him so that we can have a permanent fixture for our community here in New Hampshire.
Awesome. Going through the steps to seize the means of community property.
We're trying to voluntarily purchase the means of community property.
It's the crossover between both sides.
So that's one of the things. Justin, you brought up the issue of panarchism, and the fact that there will be no such thing. The American continent will not have a panarchism any more than we had pan-indigenous people. Each community will have its own values, its own shape, its own culture as it develops based on the economics, the bioregion, what separates and what brings them together, their access to different resources, including internet capability. So it's very easy to build that horizontal support network of mutually supporting anarcho-communist and anarcho-capitalist communities across the United States, because you really don't need to be dealing with just an anarcho-capitalist community if you are an anarcho. You can reach out to whatever the other communities offer. And if their anarcho-communism happens to offer what you want, you got a means of exchange. You got something, you got a fair trade.
Right. I make no distinction on the fact that people cities, cityscapes and more urban areas are going to lean more heavily towards capitalist, requiring currency and means of exchange for things, while urban areas and farms are going to put a lot more value on individual labor and production. Right. So to me, it makes perfect sense to say that here in Manchester, New Hampshire, we might have a thriving voluntarist capitalist society, but an hour away out in the farms in the Upper Valley, they're going to have several working neighborly communes that produce food that we have to buy from them in order if we want to live. That makes perfect sense to me as someone who wants to envision a world where there isn't violent division among economic lines.
Yeah, so I mean, this all seems so obvious that the coexistence should be possible, But we can't. I mean, we're proving that we're so bad at it just with our party right now. Just like how divided we are. So how do we
get the anarcho-capitalists to agree on what anarcho-capitalism is?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, so how do we galvanize that? How is it just by? It seems like the easiest way is by identifying the enemy. Like because we have the same enemy, which is the state. It seems like that's the best way to go. And then, maybe you're not going. I mean, you're going to have cultural disagreements, or even as we're talking, like voluntary economic disagreements. So it seems like the one thing we can all agree on is being against the authoritarians, but somehow we can't pull that together. Even in our little subsets, even in our little cliques, we're fighting each other.
So during his nomination speech for secretary of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, A.J. Olding went on a little bit of a rant about how there's an epidemic of people in the party who chase titles and clout without wanting to do the work. And I think we have a lot of people who are only in this for self-recognition. Like, libertarianism is kind of an inherently selfish philosophy. That's not a bad thing. Recognizing the individual worth and the value of one's own bodily autonomy as the preeminent value in your life is not a bad thing. But we tend to attract selfish people who come here on their own, naturally. There's a few different routes that people take to the Libertarian Party. And I think intellectual and academic selfishness is one of the main routes. So we get people who care more about liberty for me and not for thee, and position for me to overlord on thee, where they all want to be the kings of their own backyards. But we had a huge debate here, even in my own very well-knit libertarian community in New Hampshire, about how the city and the state were dealing with the local homeless population, where a lot of people were like, it's incumbent on us as libertarians to prove that the least fortunate among us can be taken care of without state intervention, and that we should help these homeless people. Obviously, not just go out and give them homes, but like charity to help them survive, a place, charity to provide a place for people to stay warm and survive the winter. Charity as opposed to taxation to solve these issues, great. But then we had one libertarian who his whole argument was, it's the only job of the states to protect my property values, so the state needs to get rid of the homeless people and ship them elsewhere.
Okay. Let's go ahead and bring up the issue of homelessness, especially considering it's about to become rampant across the United States as the foreclosures start to ramp up. Okay, we all know people are about to lose houses. The rent's about to come due on people who haven't paid rent in over a year now. You got all of these processes. We have international corporations coming in and buying up single-family dwellings all across the United States, pushing people into apartment complexes. And the homelessness is about to skyrocket. So,
easily. It's already skyrocketing here in New Hampshire.
Well,
we have
it is.
We have less than 1% rental vacancy rate. We have 4 times as many homeless people as we have vacant units.
Yeah. But the thing is why is homelessness even illegal? Why have we criminalized homelessness?
Oh, why have we criminalized it is asinine. It's the NIMBYism. It's people who care more about their own property value than the lives of their fellow human beings.
Yeah.
People who would rather see their financial investment protected than their fellow human beings survive a winter.
Yeah, if you went through and completely decriminalized homelessness, I mean fully and completely, not this token stuff like what happened here in Boise when the Supreme Court ruled against the city on sending homeless people to jail. But I mean, actually decriminalize it so that you don't have CPS going after homeless families and taking kids away. If you actually decriminalized homelessness to its full extent, property values would actually be affordable again. Reason why is because there's an awful lot of people that are paying for shit that doesn't do them any good. So you would see equity in the value of land return to what's a normal state. No point in having land if you're not working it, because you can just live in a van down by the river, right?
Don't dash on my hopes of a van down by the river. But A van down by the river is illegal in New Hampshire.
Right? Why?
Yeah.
Because of the NIMBYism.
Sleeping in a vehicle is a misdemeanor.
There's externalities associated with pollution, what goes into the river when you're living in the van by the river. But, but this comes back to, like you said, the NIMBYism. If we were to actually completely decriminalize homelessness so that people could choose, without threat of state-sponsored violence for being homeless, how many people in America right now, especially in your generation, Justin, would look at things and go, you know what? I don't need the house that bad. I don't need a roof over my head that bad. I can run my studio from the back of my minivan. Why not?
I'd be one of the first people lining up to buy a Mercedes camper. It is true. I'm 31 years old, single. My only responsibility is this cat who can't stay out of the camera. And there's nothing from stopping me from putting my computers in the back of a damn van with a sleeping area and driving. The bulk of what I do right now for income is automated online businesses and freelance writing. I can do that anywhere. My passion project is photography and digital media and art. That's what I spend most of my time on, is doing nature and wildlife photography. My life would be better if I could hop in a van and spend it driving coast to coast working on my art.
Yeah, I did that for almost 2 years. I still have the same vehicle. I have a 1994 Toyota pickup, and I put a mattress in the back, and then there was a drawer underneath the mattress that had all my cooking stuff in it, and I'd cook right on the back. Let's see, in 2015, I moved out to Arizona, and I lived in Arizona for about 4 months, and then I traveled for about 4 months, and then I lived in Colorado for about 6 months, and then I traveled around for a few more months, and then my brother flew out west and met me, and we went up to Alaska. Took 4 months doing a road trip, just living out of the two of us just living out of the Toyota pickup. And it is hard. Like, you got to find a good place to park where you're not going to get harassed.
Because it's illegal. Because it's illegal. If it wasn't illegal, there's regular rest stops on every highway in this country. When they were built and designed, when Eisenhower commissioned the program, it required a few things. One, rest stops have to be at regular intervals. Another requirement was that every so many miles there had to be a 1 mile long, perfectly flat, level stretch, because that's how he justified it as a defense project, by saying that the highways were emergency runways.
Right.
But if it were legal in every state to sleep in your vehicle, it'd be a hell of a lot easier. And even like private property, some private property owners don't give a shit. Right. Walmart has gone on record saying that their parking lots are open for people to park and sleep in 24 hours a day. They do not care. In fact, Walmart figured out it was a net benefit to them, because people were parking overnight in their stores when they weren't open, and then immediately going in to get breakfast and toiletries the next day. So it worked out for Walmart. They have no problem. In New Hampshire, the cops go and patrol Walmart's parking lot and harass people who are sleeping in Walmart, even though Walmart said it was okay.
Yeah. Because the cops are still prosecuting people for the city's vagrancy laws.
Believe it or not, I have never heard of anybody being prosecuted at Walmart. The cops harass them and tell them to leave. But anytime somebody has stood their ground and said, show me where Walmart requested me to leave, the cops cannot produce a letter of trespass.
Yes.
They try and get people to leave so they can get fined elsewhere.
Right.
The Walmart in Manchester does not care. And I've driven by there at night because it's right across the street from Chipotle. And like anytime after 9 p.m., the Walmart in Manchester, this is like 20, 30 cars parked way back of the parking lot, and a couple 18-wheelers truckers pulling off the highway right onto one to go pass out in Walmart's parking lot. Walmart doesn't care.
Right.
Walmart, I'm going to piss off the left by praising Walmart so much. Because the left
You
thinks
are.
Walmart's a giant evil corporation.
It is.
Walmart may be a giant evil corporation, but there is actual case studies that have been done by emergency management firms about how Walmart treats their employees better than any other corporation in the world.
Yeah.
So,
but again, most of the reason why Walmart's able to do that is because we grant them subsidies. We grant them tax-free status, for the first 10 years when they enter a community. We have given them a lot.
Right. We've given them a lot, but at the same time, that Walmart does do a lot of stuff that's not obligated on them. Just because a community made a poor financial decision to build a store for a private company and drive all their local business out of business doesn't change the fact that in some areas where super centers make sense, like big urban environments and cities, New Orleans in particular, New Orleans is an incredible example. I don't admit it to many people, but my actual academic background is emergency management and homeland security, and I did a lot of work for FEMA.
So, oh dear.
But we did case studies. We did case studies, and part of remodeling FEMA in 2009, FEMA went through a drastic remodel and a drastic reorganization, how they structured their responses to different disasters. And one of the things that came out of it was the mass decentralization of FEMA into regional field offices and then local field offices to coordinate responses, because they found out upon studying how different companies had responded to emergencies that, Walmart had food and water in New Orleans a week before FEMA did after Katrina.
Yeah.
Walmart had demolition crews in New Orleans in under 24 hours after the storm ended to demo the 8 stores that were put out of commission. Walmart had buses in New Orleans to move their out-of-work employees to new locations. Walmart had 37 buses and 2 planes sent to New Orleans within 48 hours. They had determined that of their 10 stores that were affected by the storm, 8 of them were done for good, irrecoverable. They demolished those, plowed everything out up front, and said, food and water for the community. People come and take what you need. We're writing it off. And then they had buses there. Anybody who was a Walmart employee and didn't have a job to go to the next day, they said, grab your family, grab whatever you can salvage from your home and get on the bus. Where do you want to go? We have openings in Tulsa. We have openings in Georgia. Here are all these Walmarts. Where do you want to go? You have a job waiting, and we got an apartment for you.
That's how capitalism works, man.
99% of Walmart employees showed up for work the next day, when less than 30% of New Orleans police officers did. So seeing how a private company was able to structure their response led to an improvement in government and an improvement in efficiency for a government service. Unfortunately, the rest of the government doesn't take cues from the free market.
No.
Well, and that is one of the things, Walmart's been able to do as well as it has because it's been able to handle its automation. It's always been at the front end of the automation process. Some of the financial decisions that have been made to support moving Walmart into communities, have decimated the communities they moved into. But as far as the automation process, the supply chain management, Walmart had it down. They do have it down. The fact that we continue to allow government organizations, whether it's at the city level, county level, or state level, continue to subsidize to the point where it allows Walmart to bankrupt local community stores that facilitate the velocity of money in a community. That's that's
a problem with government, not a problem with the market. And that's why I say that our current system's not capitalist. Our current system is corporatist and fascist, because government and business are hand in hand, and it's government and big business in particular. People all over Twitter and the internet are celebrating Jeff Bezos pushing and demanding a $15 minimum wage. Why does Jeff Bezos want a $15 minimum wage? Because he can afford it, and he knows his competition can't.
Well, especially after all the subsidies we've been handing Bezos. We got an Amazon distribution center here in Idaho. It's tax-free for the next 10 years.
To be fair, I do kind of take the approach where I don't like the idea of hating on the player when I can hate the game. I don't hate Amazon for taking advantage of the tax subsidies that are being offered. I'm just upset that they're not offered to every other player.
Right.
Yes.
I think anybody who wants to start a smaller local business should have the exact same benefits that are given to Amazon and Walmart when they open up a new shop. In fact, one of the things, like, my state's governor is a petty tyrant who thinks he's king shit. But one of the greatest things I've ever seen a governor do was when he wrote the proposal to Amazon to locate headquarters 2 in New Hampshire. Under a subsection of it was like benefits you get from being in New Hampshire. And compared to, we see like Boston was like your 10 years property tax exemption on your new lot in Boston. South Carolina's like property tax exemption, blah, blah, blah. He's like, you get the same tax breaks as every other New Hampshire citizen. Like, that's all it was. He was like, Amazon can move here. Amazon should move here. Your incentive is that we already don't have an income tax. Like, granted, we didn't get the Amazon's headquarters, but we did get 3 Amazon distribution centers here in New Hampshire. They did not get tax breaks. They did not get any tax breaks. And they've been a huge boon for the community. As far as like low skill, high paying jobs that they're offering to the community, like people who aren't able to get other good paying jobs to support a family in the community can go work at Amazon, load a truck overnight for $18 an hour.
You mean because we bankrupted the trade unions over the last 30 years?
We've got Teamsters galore up here.
I'm not talking Teamsters. I'm talking trade unionists. Your
problem with unions is unions,
iron workers.
Yeah. The problem with unions is the unions created their own death knell when they stopped operating as guilds and providers of labor and started operating as lobbyist organizations.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
the only union that I have any respect for anymore is the Marine Engineers Benevolent Association, MEBA, because they still operate as a guild. They still have you go to the union halls to bid on jobs, because what they've decided that their job as a union is to be a provider of labor. So they negotiate contracts with shipping companies, and then they post those jobs in the union hall, and anybody who's out of work can go bid on them based on seniority in the union.
Yeah.
Like, that's how a union should work. Provide the labor. Don't lobby and negotiate and try and get the government to protect your employees. That's your job. And further, my father's a Teamster. My father's a 40-year Teamster. I've worked in warehouses with him when I was younger. Union boss threatened to fire my father because I was having political discussions on the job. And I was asking what the benefit of the union was. And the union boss told me if I didn't stop it, neither me or my father would be scheduled anymore. So I just quit and walked away so my dad didn't lose his job of 40 fucking years. Cool. But in 2016, my dad's road to voting third party was he calls me one day. He's like, yeah, we just had a union meeting. They told us we couldn't vote for Bernie. We had to vote for Hillary. I can't vote for a woman. Tell me about this Gary Johnson guy. Oh my God. He proceeded to vote for Joe Jorgensen, like 180 in 4 years. But he refused to vote for Hillary, and he wouldn't go against what his union said and vote for Bernie. The reason the union told him he couldn't vote for Bernie is because Bernie was going to destroy all the unions by offering free health care to everybody. Because when Bernie offered free health care to everybody, the union had nothing to offer their members anymore and served no purpose.
Hey, any reason to not vote for Hillary is good, regardless of what the reason is. I don't care what it is, as long as you don't vote for Hillary.
Google Hillary Clinton body count. Sorry, you just got demonetized, Reed.
Yeah, I've been under review for monetization for, I think, 3 months now. I applied 3 months ago, and they're still working on it. And they're probably going through the Pete Quinones and Ryan Dawson videos and being like, Sorry.
I just got finished with the 3-day ban on Facebook. My first Zuck ever.
Oh, man.
Ever. I've never been Zuck before. This one was for posting a thread said, if there were no consequences, what politician would you most want to bare knuckle box in a dimly lit parking lot? And in a subthread, after somebody said Putin, I'm like, I don't want to fight Putin. Guy has Parkinson's disease. He's on his last legs. I think it'd be better to watch him suffer as he watches his empire fall apart from internal opposition. Meanwhile, I really want somebody to break Nancy Pelosi's jaw. Bam. Done.
Gone.
Like break Nancy Pelosi's jaw. Done. Gone forever. But in reality, that's my answer to the question. I think it'd be great if somebody taught Nancy Pelosi whether or not she could digest teeth. All right, Joe, what politician would you most want to bare knuckle box?
God. Right now, it's got to be Tom Cotton.
Oh, yeah.
That's always an easy answer.
It is.
Tom Cotton is always an easy answer.
Yeah.
Reed?
Probably Liz Cheney or Lindsey Graham. One of those two.
I don't want to fight Liz Cheney. I want to send Liz Cheney on a hunting trip with her father.
That's what I said. Did you see that yesterday? I quote tweeted her video about how we can't leave Afghanistan, and I said, please go quail hunting with your dad. Oh, man.
Yeah. You didn't get kicked off of Twitter. See,
yeah.
When you attack the right, it's fine.
Right. Well, so if I can attack the right, I'm going to, believe me. I take full advantage of that. Well,
government too does. I don't understand Twitter's how they choose who to suspend and who not to suspend. Mm-hmm. On January 6th, I was in an altered state of mind. Like, what a day to be tripping. And I was like walked out of the basement with my friends watching TV. I'm like, oh, what's up? He's like, my brother just called me. He said there's a riot in DC and he's inside the Capitol building. I'm like, what? He turns on the TV and we're just looking for his brother in the crowd. I'm like, this is fun. I'm dreaming the whole time. Like, I see Trump get suspended from Twitter for telling everyone to go home. And I'm like, if Trump got suspended for telling everyone to stop rioting and go home, how easy is it to get suspended nowadays? And so I went hard on January 6th. Like, yeah, burn it down. Like, yeah, take prisoners. Like, and I never got anything. Like, at one point, like, somebody reported one of my tweets because somebody commented, like, you're on fire today. I'm like, unfortunately, the Capitol isn't. And somebody reported that, and Twitter said it didn't violate. So I don't know what the fuck it takes to get suspended from Twitter nowadays, because like on January 6th, I decided to test the boundaries and couldn't find them.
Yeah, I don't really know what it takes either, because I've definitely made some tweets that I don't know if advocating violence against the U.S. government counts as hate speech, but it seems like it would.
I've had that argument with like nap purists and fucking people like coming into my mention and saying I'm not really a libertarian because I advocate violence. I'm like, it's self-defense, bitch.
Yeah. I don't know if Twitter would look at it that way, though. That's why I'm surprised I haven't been removed, or I've never even been in a timeout in Twitter. I can't believe some of the stuff.
They gave me a blue check mark.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've had the blue check mark for 4 years now. I'm like, oh, fucking no. All I do is shit post.
You're a libertarian candidate for federal office. You got a blue check mark. What are you doing with your life? Shit posting.
Yeah. Shit. All I've been doing is shit posting tonight. And at one point I tweeted my BCH address. I'm like, haha, BCH go moon. And $130 have shown up in my Bitcoin wallet from Twitter. like people ask me, it's like, what has the blue check mark gotten you on Twitter? And like I'm laughing at I laugh at Dave Smith not having one, especially with Fat Dave Smith now fucking.
Oh my god, that's so great.
Get one first. By the way, I have a Twitter poll running. It's pinned at the top of my profile at O'Donnell4NH about who's better, Fat Comic Dave or Boring Comic Dave. Right now, Fat Comic Dave is winning in a goddamn landslide. But The only thing that I've ever gotten out of having a blue check mark is I haven't paid for Domino's in over 2 years, because I went into Domino's once to pick up my order after the app said it was ready, and not even close to ready. And I take a picture of the board and a screenshot of the app. I'm like, it's not, it says it's still 20 minutes done. The app says it's done. And I tweet it. And within 30 seconds, Domino's is in my DMs like, we're so sorry. What's your email address? And they just keep dropping free pizza codes in my inbox. I haven't paid because, like, please don't tweet badly about us.
Yeah, if anyone's watching this who has Twitter, you got to go check out Fat Comic Dave Smith. It's hilarious, and Dave is taking the joke pretty well. He's retweeting a lot of the stuff, but it's hilarious. Go check it out. I think it's at Fat Comic Dave or something. It's the funniest shit I've seen in a long time.
And go vote in the poll. Because right now the poll is 78.2% in favor of Fat Dave and only 21.8% in favor of Boring Dave.
Oh my god! Yeah,
Did you? I can't wait for Porkfest. I'm torn between ordering a giant cardboard cutout of Fat Dave for Porkfest to follow him around with. Speaking of Porkfest, all right. Talk about the tent getting too big, because at some point I think the Liberty Movement's tent is starting to get too big, with the welcoming of the hard right and like the woke left, and letting them feel like their ideas are welcome. There's a Facebook group of everybody who's confirmed to have bought tickets for Porkfest and registered for Porkfest, and everyone organizing. And somebody posts in the group today with a box of American flags and a screenshot of the campground map circled his site. He's like, I'll be at this site and I'll have boxes of American flags to give away to children to celebrate patriotism. And I'm like, oh, this is going to go fucking well. And I open the comments and it's just all fire emojis and burning bonfire gifs and comments about flag burning and like, you're not welcome, flag it and statist. And and like God hates flags memes. And I'm like, these are my people. Raise
the black flag. Raise the black flag.
Yeah. The thing I vend at Porkfest every year is firewood. I order a quart of firewood and put it on my site, and I don't charge for it. I say, take whatever you think you need and leave whatever you think it's worth. And I end up always making a substantial profit because people overvalue shit when you don't put a price on it. His campsite's directly across from mine. And so comments are along the lines of, oh, what a perfect place to be giving away kindling across from Justin's firewood. And we're planning on scheduling a flag burning at my site as a ceremony. I'm going to set up cameras and do a real artsy picture of people around a fire all burning flags together. But not just American flags. We're going to burn all flags because ideas shouldn't be raised over people. And that's going to include the American flag, the Blue Lives Matter flag, a Confederate flag, a UN flag, a gay pride flag, a BLM flag, a Gadsden flag.
Oh my.
We're here to burn them all together because we might get close to freedom by destroying the bonds that divide us.
Damn. What day is the burning taking place?
I don't know. Yeah, I got to see how many people are going to commit first, but
because I would like to be present for that. That would be interesting. So.
One suggestion was to not do it during Porkfest, but do it during Forkfest and doing it on the 4th of July. Oh, and I got the idea from Shoe on Head. She has a video on her YouTube where she's like, I'm going to burn a flag, and the thumbnail's an American flag. And then you watch the video, and it's her burning her bisexual pride flag. And the leftists in the comments are losing their goddamn minds about how free speech doesn't matter when you annoy them.
Right.
And it was the lyrics from an old Bright Eyes song, because I was an emo kid in high school and I listened to Bright Eyes. And there's a song called Four Winds, where he's complaining about religion and religion being awful. And one of the lines is, the Bible's blind, the Torah is deaf, and the Quran is mute, but if you burn them all together, you might get close to the truth. And I'm like, I'm going to apply that to the flags, and I'm going to have a flag burning ceremony for the ages. And I think it's going to be a great time.
It's definitely going to be interesting. Good fences make good neighbors. You know that old analogy.
Right.
Looks like you're about to burn down all the fences.
Sometimes lines need to be crossed, and like I had a tweet the other day, and I was just like, if you don't make people uncomfortable, you're never going to challenge them to think differently.
Right.
Unfortunately, again, going way back to earlier in the conversation, what LP Kentucky did with the Holocaust tweet, I actually thought was pretty fucking great because it made people uncomfortable and it forced people to have the discussion. And of course, that doesn't include people like Seth Rogen, whose whole contribution to the discussion was fuck this shit. But like I saw thousands of people in the comments actually having discussions where people are like, you're trying to downplay the Holocaust. It's like, no, we're trying to upplay this.
Right.
It's like we recognize exactly how bad the Holocaust was, and we're trying to show you that this is a step towards that. The slippery slope is real. And the problem was the follow-up from the party just kept going hard at the meme as opposed to having the discussion. But people were having those discussions, and I think it's important that not as the party, but as individuals, we start crossing lines, making people uncomfortable and forcing conversations with people who think differently than us, to force people to encounter new perspectives and realize how we think. As a party, we need to do better at like policy. We need to do better at delivering policy rather than abstract thought. But individuals can force abstract thought on their neighbors and their acquaintances by acting audaciously, by doing shit. Like if Martin Luther King hadn't violated private property rights and sat at a counter he wasn't allowed to, if Rosa Parks hadn't violated private property rights and sat in a bus seat where she wasn't allowed to, if it weren't for audacious shit like that, we wouldn't have had discussions to move things forward.
Well, you talk about that with regards to private property rights, and those weren't actually private property rights rules that they were in violation of. Those were public mandates. That was legalization or criminalization of the particular behavior, despite the fact that the private property rights had nothing to do with it.
Now extend that to the mask mandates. People who don't want to wear masks in stores. It's illegal. And here's the thing. There's the difference between a public accommodation and a private property. And this is a debate I think libertarians suck at, because we can't make the distinction between private property and public accommodations without actually going into the deep legal fucking minutia of what constitutes private property and what constitutes the public taking in a public accommodation.
Right.
But it's publicly perceived as a violation of private property rights. So what they did on the bus and in the diners and all the sit-ins, it's publicly perceived. A lot of pragmatists and people in the LP are condemning people who are protesting against mask mandates in stores by saying you're violating private property rights. But those are public accommodations, and it's the government saying you have to wear a mask in there. It's the minimum wage clerks that are just enforcing it.
Yeah.
Because the government has deputized private business as an arm of the state at this point. So again, it justifies small acts of nonviolent protest against government overreach, even though it is private property. Like Martin Luther King violated private property by sitting in the diner where he wasn't allowed to because the private property owner didn't authorize it. The private property owner didn't authorize it. Why? Because of a state edict. Most likely because he was a racist asshole, but the state edict was there to back him up.
Yeah. But that's one of the things we look at with regards to the mask mandates right now, is because despite the fact that a number of states have gone fully open and the states have done away with the mask mandates, there are still institutions, there are still stores, there are still private property owners. They're saying, you know what? No, you're going to wear a mask if you're going to come into my place.
Sure. Just and if they want to do that,
of the mask mandates, there were store owners that said, no, you're not going to wear a mask in my place.
Yeah. Right.
We're the government. So you still have private property owners that are maintaining their own rules in different stores. So you start looking at what comes down with that. So we ran into that problem here because we had a lot of stores in Boise. They were ran by people who were interested in maintaining, they believed in mask idea, that it actually helped. And I think there were certain health insurance incentives that came along with making sure the mandates were followed. So it was profitable for the store owners to enforce the mandates for private reasons, and you still had people showing up saying, you know what, this is a public and you're discriminating against me because I refuse, and a lot of them tried to come up with this stupid ass medical excuse. I got a medical reason for not wearing the mask. Dude, what the fuck?
Believe it or not, in New Hampshire, that was a go-to because, again, our governor's a shithead. He writes unenforceable edicts. But the governor's mask mandate in New Hampshire, was 5 fucking pages long of exemptions. And the very last listed exemption was medical exemptions. And then a subparagraph that said, private individuals, business owners, and public accommodations attendees are not allowed to ask for details about individual medical exemptions. So everyone had a medical exemption.
Yeah.
What the hell?
But I noticed, and there was a big argument that people were making. It's like, well, somebody like Nick Sarwark has been huge on the wear masks and respect private property,
right?
Locally in the local argument. And everybody's response to him was like, you can't know for sure that the private property owner cares about masks when there's a government mandate. When the government has ordered the private property owners to act as agents of the state and enforce a mask mandate, you cannot be sure that the private property owner actually wants people to wear masks. At this point, you are protesting against the government's edict over private property. The governor announced today that the mask mandate expires tomorrow and he's not renewing it. I went around town today. All of the signs are gone. Every business in downtown Manchester took down their mask required signs today, that before the governor's order expired. I went into 3 of them today. Nobody gave a shit. Yesterday, they were begging people to put masks on. None of the businesses gave 2 fucks, but they were enforcing the governor's order because they were getting fined if they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just ended the mandate in Utah on Saturday, and so all the signs are still up, but nobody's wearing masks. It's just like it still says mask required for entry, but nobody wears them, and none of the some of the stores, the employees are still wearing them, but
this whole pandemic has been an exercise in the observation of human domicility, because people have become so accustomed to just doing whatever the fuck they're told by people in positions of power and authority without question. And that's the real lesson we need to take away from the pandemic. Is it's not trust science, it's not trust whatever, it's doubt your masters. Realize that the people overlording above you don't always necessarily have your best interest in mind and aren't always necessarily acting with complete information to inform their decisions on your behalf.
Right.
COVID cases in Texas have plummeted, dropped significantly since the end of the mandates and the end of the lockdown. And when Fauci was asked about this in an interview, he said they have no idea why. They cannot explain why cases have gone down in Texas, even though the Rangers let 80,000 people into their stadium for opening day. They have no idea why. No cases after the Rangers let 80,000 unvaccinated people into their stadium for opening day. And Fauci's just like, we don't know why, but wear your masks. Stop doing what you're told without questioning it. That's the message I wish people would take away from the pandemic, because it's how many lives have been destroyed by the lockdowns versus how many people died to the pandemic. And unfortunately, as far as science goes, we will never know the answer to that question, because we can't reproduce this as an experiment. We don't have a second Earth to experiment on with a control. Which, again, that's my argument against most climate science, too.
Well, the other thing, I love the issue with climate science, but that's a different story because I'm actually working on a different project related to that. But the issue with the science, trust the science. Well, how can we trust the science when we know most of the science that was used in the model was based off of bogus information. And literally, we killed people left and right in New York because the mayor or the governor decided to house COVID patients with people with compromised immune systems.
Right. Yeah. Well,
You just watched 40 million die overnight, and now that's the model. And it's like, well, no, that's not that really isn't the model, because you deliberately ran a friggin' eugenics project in the heart of New York City.
Right.
Yeah, it's
what the hell?
To me, it's even more basic than that. As an educated person, I grew up and I was raised to constantly question science. Like, the point of science is to constantly be questioned.
Right.
Trust the science and it's settled science are two of the most terrifying phrases an educated person can hear, because it means people aren't willing to consider further science.
Right. You always question the science. That's the only way science gets better.
Like, if you don't ask questions, if you don't formulate hypotheses, and you don't test the results, then how do you progress? Like, how do you get new information without experimentation? And how do you proceed to experimentation without a new hypothesis? You should always be questioning everything. And that shouldn't be limited to science. It should be a life model to question everything. 2-year-olds are the smartest people on earth, because the thing they ask the most is why.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
If everybody went through life and your follow-up to everything you're presented with is why, it would be a better life, because you question the things you're told, and either it's going to be proven wrong by its own explanation, or you're going to learn the inherent foundation of the why. Why and why not should be the two questions nobody ever stops asking.
Yeah, you just kind of you just summed up basically the philosophy that I've tried to preach on this channel, is just question everything, whether it's your, whether it's political, religious, societal, whatever it is, like, always question. And
why?
It's interesting. I think I shared the tweet with you when I made it, but I made a tweet about why I left religion, and it was because I remember that one. It was answers that can't be questioned instead of questions that can't be answered, and now science is becoming that, like the merge of statism and science right now. You can't question the answers anymore. Like, they're given to you and you're supposed to just accept them without any wondering at all. That's religion. I mean, that's not science, Well,
the thing is we go back and we look at the history of science. Okay, the history of science over the last 400 years, it's been riddled with times when science basically came to a standstill because that was the science. It was fact because some scientists said it was. Despite the fact that they used bad data, despite the fact that they used an improper scientific technique, the fact that their assumptions were all wrong when they started doing whatever minimal experiment they started doing. The idea that you drop a ball from the top of a mast, on a ship en route, the thought that the ball would fall into the ocean rather than fall straight down the mast because the ship was in motion. That was fact for the educated people back. What was it? Socrates that came up with that bullshit because he had never been on a boat. But the history of science is riddled with that, where advancements just would stop until the politics of the followers of a particular scientist finally died off, and the new people were finally allowed to question the results. And here we are, we're back at the same stage in scientific development right now, where we've decided that science, that science is fact. To the same degree it's religion, to the same degree it's politics. And until we get enough people ready to question the status of specific scientists who have come up and said, I'm not going to allow you to redo my experiment. I'm not going to allow you to question my theory. You know, until we get past that again, where we can actually take a look at these situations and understand them better. And that runs the whole gamut from everything with regards to health, biology, science, social sciences, you know, our local our political issue, our economics, even, you know, how do we go back and take a look at our science on economics, you know, going back to Austrian school, going back to Chicago school, you know,
everything needs to be questioned. And like, and to your point, like, I want to live in a world that when like something major, like catastrophic shift in scientific understanding is discovered, that it's news. It's fucking headline news. Like, oh shit, everything we thought was true was just disproven by an experiment. Everybody go read about this, learn about it, and like get ready for what comes next. Did you know that 4 days ago, the University of Pennsylvania conducted an experiment which disproved the standard model of physics?
No, I didn't. Too recent, man. Too recent. Too new.
4 days ago, the theorists at the University of Pennsylvania conducted an experiment with the 14 known particles in electromagnetic physics, and found out the muon particles, which are giant electrons that have the same charge as an electron but 207 times the mass, have had negative magnetic reaction and had a different arc than every other known particle, and it was a parabolic difference. And the math of the experiment indicates that there are dozens of undiscovered types of energy and particles that existed and that we're able to observe in that experiment that our standard model of physics can't account for. It's going to fundamentally
15-year-old son talk with you on that.
It's going to fundamentally change mathematics. Out of my realm. Yeah, it's going to fundamentally change mathematics and physics as we know it on like the future scale. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah, so everyone watching, Justin's obviously the smart one out of the three of us. So if you want to be informed, go follow him.
No, all I do is shit post on Twitter.
Yeah, but he's right, because 4 days ago, we just made the scientific breakthrough that's going to allow warp core engines faster than light travel.
Like
it happened 4 days ago, and do we know about it?
No, but part of that can be attributed to the attention span of culture as itself. Like, what is the attention span of the collective of humanity, or just the American people? It's fucking negative. People forget about shit the moment it's said. There was a headline last summer, not in a fucking soap rag, not in a fucking like satire magazine, in a goddamn reputable fucking news source out of Israel, that said that Donald Trump and the Israeli premier both were in communication with aliens and knew about it. And this was reported by credible news sources, and we just fucking ignored it.
I did a video on that when it happened because no one else was talking about it. I was like, guys, I don't know about you, but I'm upset that Netanyahu and Trump are
representing the human race,
humanity.
Like,
how did that just get ignored? Or like,
well, the worst part of it is why they have to pick those two. You know, if aliens showed up on Earth and walked up to you and said, "Let me speak to your leader,"
Netanyahu and Trump,
right? Like,
why? Why would you choose those two?
2 days ago, there was a fucking headline about a Department of Defense funded medical project for new types of vaccination protocols using mRNA technology and digital microchips to allow medical professionals to insert a microchip in you that can be updated over the air to deliver mRNA instructions to program vaccines inside your own body, developed by the goddamn military.
The Pentagon,
I'm fucking livid that we are stuck in the timeline where Alex Jones is right. Like, and
I want to.
No one's covering that.
I wouldn't mind, because that's transhumans. Where's my nanobots? I want my nanobots, man.
I mean, it's not even that Alex Jones is right. It's that everyone else has just been so wrong that it makes him seem right because he hits the target a couple of times.
Do you know what the worst part of Alex Jones is? The worst part. The thing everyone gives him the most shit for, the thing he's made fun of the most for is they're turning the frogs gay.
Yeah.
Do you know where he got the information for that bit? A Stanford University research study that showed that the chemicals being put in the water were influencing frog sexuality, and they didn't have the ability to change genders anymore, and they were resorting to mass homosexuality. Like, Alex Jones was actually right about that, and it's the thing he's made fun of the most for. And I fucking hate this timeline. Like, he got that information from Stanford University, and the internet's like, God, that's fucking hilarious. Good joke, Alex. Good joke. Like, I am terrified. I fully believe at this point that Alex Jones is controlled opposition for the Illuminati. He's a secret agent by the Illuminati that was sent here to spew wild and crazy shit that's so true that none of us will believe it.
Oh, yeah. It's a little too close to home. That'd be true.
Wait, Alex Jones is right. The frogs are being born that way. So what about humans? Are they born that way too now because of the water we drink?
Well, if you listen to radical feminists, they believe that being straight is a choice and that women have an obligation to the feminist movement to choose to be politically lesbian.
Okay, honestly, given that there are 8 billion people on the planet right now, closing in on 9 billion, we can stand a few more lesbians. But, yeah, the incels are getting a little bit out of hand, though. We got to figure out something for them. Don't know what that is yet, because I really don't know any women that can put up with them.
Do they have a caucus yet? Because if so, they're not our problem. If not, they're not our problem.
Well, but that's ridiculous. We've actually reached the point right now where the alt-right is so homophobic that, you know, being straight is gay. When was the conversation?
Super straight. All right. Super. Here's the worst part. Like, I got in trouble on Twitter. I thought I was going to get suspended, but I pissed off the left real bad with this one. When the super straight shit started, and I said, does the existence of super straight versus normal straight finally settle the debate that traps aren't gay? They're just not super straight?
Dude.
Quality shit posting content.
Not ready for that, man. There's some people out there not ready for that. You know, one way or the other. There's some people out there not ready for that.
It's one of my favorite questions to see asked of people, and it's just how they respond. 2 years ago, it was a fun day. We went to the straight pride rally in Boston to protest it because I thought it was fucking retarded. And Brandon Navam and the Super Happy Fun America kids and the alt-right crowd that were putting on this fucking stupid ass fucking protest in Boston for straight pride. Myself,
Adam Caucus showed up for his little speech at it, I believe.
Adam's speech was fucking hilarious. He's the weird part. So I went down to protest. Adam was going down to speak at the fucking rally, and me and Adam met up a couple hours beforehand with a few friends in Boston. He gave me a copy of his speech. I'm reading it. I'm like, they're gonna fucking lynch you.
They tried to. They tried to.
Yeah, they fucking tossed his ass out with like halfway through his speech. They cut his mic and fucking tossed him out. But like, they're gonna fucking lynch you, dude. But later that day, me and Adam ended up being the victims of police violence and ended up being assaulted by Boston police. Got a nice picture of us both fucking getting treated by Antifa medics after we fucking got all of the mace in the world in our fucking faces, because I had the audacity to take a picture of Captain Jack Danilecki of the Boston police force punching a teenage girl in the face.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he got promoted after I published it. But it was the 19th excessive force complaint against him in his career. At that point, they just promote you out of the field.
Yeah. Promote you beyond your level of incompetence.
But like, we went down there, and I'm standing again with AJ Holding. He joined us. He's good friends of both mine and Adam's, and he was down in Boston with us. And we're walking around outside, and Blaze Media is outside interviewing people on camera about how do you feel about the straight pride parade and whatnot. And then like I give my little like spiel about how it's stupid. It's a protest of a protest. It's inherently demeaning of the struggle that LGBT people have gone through historically and culturally through the years. And then they just turn to AJ, put the mic in his face. He's like, "Are traps gay?" And like on camera, AJ's just like dumb and like, "I'm not answering this," and walks away. But like, it's a fun question to like catch people off guard when they think they're doing the social justice-y shit. And same.
Okay, so go ahead and flip that around. You know, you got the super straight out there, and the super straight have already decided that, you know, a woman doing the reverse cowgirl thing is gay because she's on top. Yeah, it's been put out there, man. It's been put out there, believe it or not.
You know what the first thing people I got sent, like I wasn't even aware. I don't follow the fucking cringe Twitter. So like when super straight started trending, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? What I see is people like, oh my God, they're so dumb. They used the Grindr logo as the super straight flag. Like they used the logo of the preeminent gay dating app as the super straight flag.
But the thing is, if you're super straight, you're super alpha. That's just the way it is, right? You're going to be super straight, you're super alpha. What happens if you're that super straight, super alpha who can't turn down a dare and you've been dared to a game of gay chicken?
Then you've succumbed to the worst of identity politics culture and let it dictate your life. Like that's the real problem with like the whole super straight trend is the like it's identity politics running its course. Like we can't go past super straight. I hope
I'm waiting for the super straight couple that's playing gay chicken to, you know, adopt a little girl and run a bed and breakfast in New Hampshire, you know, right next door to you there, Justin.
I mean, as long as they don't bother people, we're pretty cool and accepting of people. Like, do what you want to do, as long as you don't bother me.
I'm really straight. I'm just not going to lose this game, man. I you know, there's been going on 10 years now. Secretly, I think he might be gay.
Oh man! Well, we're coming up on 2 hours, and we've definitely entered some weird territory.
Yeah, we've strayed a long way from no caucus for old men.
But I think we covered a lot of
left and right are going to disown us after this conversation.
I can only hope. Like, hey, it's okay. I even got the Libertarian left to shut up once upon a time. It's all about playing their own games back at them. After Joe Jorgensen came to visit New Hampshire for her second campaign stop in New Hampshire, we went to a Black Lives Matter vigil because it was right after a shooting. And some people were really upset that we were libertarians at a Black Lives Matter vigil because Black Lives Matter is an evil organization. I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. Cops are killing people. They're the evil ones.
Yeah.
But then when we were leaving, one particular individual, a quote unquote libertarian, starts chastising me and yelling at me. The same individual who was upset that I introduced Joe Jorgensen to Dave Smith, very upset that neither me or Joe were wearing a mask at the vigil. And she starts lecturing me and ranting at me about not wearing a mask. And I just turned to her. I'm like, I'm sorry. I have PTSD from being stuck in a Humvee that was on fire, and I have breathing issues, as well as a lisp that makes communication difficult. Are you disability shaming me? And she just clammed up and walked away.
I think one of the things we all know at the end of the day is when it comes down to bodily autonomy, self-determination, the rest of that. Yeah, if you don't like what somebody's doing, walk away. Freedom of disassociation is one of the greatest freedoms in the world.
So the big takeaways are that everybody needs to read Plank 6 of the Mises Caucus platform.
Especially the Mises. It's none of your business, and if it's a problem for you, walk away. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up the entire conversation we just had. You know, there's no legislative differences. We're all against the government, so it's societal cultural differences, so who
It's a
cares?
culture war.
Like,
even within the Libertarian Party, it's a culture war. It's what we're down.
Stop attacking each other while cops are still killing people.
exactly. Well, guys, we'll have to do this again. I think this trio has some chemistry to it. I enjoyed the
Absolutely.
conversation. So I'll just let you guys tell everyone where they can follow you and if you got any plans in the near future. So, Justin, you go first, and then Joe.
All my shit postings at O'Donnell4NH on Twitter. It's pretty much all I do when I'm not being kicked off of Facebook for saying the exact same things. Website's currently down, being reconstructed, so follow me over on Twitter. You can go vote in the Fat Dave versus Normal Dave poll and get
Please
updates
vote
on
in
what
that.
I'm doing in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I got my website at Idaho Joe for Congress. I got my Twitter ID Joe for Congress with number 4. Pretty much the same handles on Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, go ahead, look me up. Going to be around for a little while. Still working out the issues as to whether or not I'm going to run for Congress again in 2022. But right now, Kind Idaho, you can find me at joe@kindidaho.org. And we're legalizing marijuana in the state of Idaho. Well, medical marijuana. But
Baby steps.
we're getting there. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Remember, folks, family, friends, community. As long as you got those 3, you can make anything happen.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video. Let's see what's next. I'll be on with Ryan Dawson and the Jackman brothers on Saturday morning, so stay tuned for that. And I do have Tom Woods coming on the show at the end of the month, so that's an exciting update. So I'll post.
You Nazi.
Yeah, I know. I'm ready for all the accusations.
Hey, tell Tom that he needs to come to our flag burning at Porkfest, and he can burn the Confederate flag, and that'll put all the problems to rest.
That'll get everyone off his ass about the Legion of the South or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I like that. All right. Thank you for watching, everyone. We'll catch you on the next